Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well. You're looking absolutely amazing, by the way, I must add. Anyway, I'm going to get straight into the meat and potatoes. That was like a blended sentence. I'm going to get straight into the meat and potatoes. See, that's better. That's what's known as talking properly. But anyway, yeah, let's get straight into the meat and potatoes. As we talk about Jay Slater, and look, we're over 3 weeks in, and Jay Slater is still in the running for Where's Wally Championship 2024, as there is just simply no sign of him. And with there being no sign of him, we find ourselves asking, what did happen? What did actually happen to this lad? Because in general, we say, don't we? People don't just vanish, they are vanished. Now, that is under their own volition or due to third party involvement. And the thing about the Jay Slater case is that both are seemingly equally possible, and they come with versions of a story to make that option viable. And in this video, we're going to talk about the three, I would say, are the only options that we can be looking at here. The third one's going to piss people off, but make no bones about it, each of them contain caveats to them, and we're not going to dig deep into the caveats of each version of events in this, but what we are going to do is we're going to look at them and we'll consider how plausible that option is, and you can let me know in the comments after the video. So look, what happened originally, we originally heard the news, they push out this picture of Jay Slater looking like this angelic butterwouldn't mouth boy, and, he's trying on hats, and they're like, our son has gone missing, he's vanished, he's gone vanished in Tenerife. But you know what happens as soon as people get named on social media, people start looking at everything, don't they? It becomes Google marathon, and everyone's Googling who this person is, and it very quickly became apparent that Jay Slater definitely was no angel. Now, look, what I will say is, sadly, we have a different culture now. We have a culture where, because of numerous things, and that ranges from cost of living crisis, the way governments are shutting down things for young adults to do, and, young adults nowadays, they find themselves getting hooked up in gangs because they have access to social media, so they see what other people have that are just unobtainable to them. We hear that Jay Slater's family weren't a wealthy family, so perhaps he grew up around frustration of wanting stuff, and what better way to get stuff than to head down a more nefarious route. Now, I'm not saying that that's the best option, but what I'm saying is, unless you have walked in the shoes of certain people, you can't really criticize their way of living, because it's sometimes just what they're brought up around. And I'm not making excuses for what Jay Slater did. What he did alongside this group of friends, where they attacked another youth with a machete and left him with severe injuries, and then they subsequently got off that. I do wonder, part of the fact that they got off of it will be in part due to what I've just spoken about. There's not just black and white. There is a grey area within stories. And again, I'm not sticking up for that, but what I'm saying is, youths today aren't not like in my day, not in the 80s when we all got along. But look, so he's not the most angelic boy in the world. He's got a bit of a checkered past. He's done bad things. That don't mean he's a bad person. He could have reformed. And there lies the first question. Is Jay a reformed kind of thug, and he was putting that behind him, and within a bricklaying apprenticeship, was he heading on to better things? We'll stick a pin in that. So that being said, look, the guy's still missing. He goes to the NRG Festival in Tenerife, which is a 3-day rave event, the new rave generation, and he heads out there with some friends. And while on this break, he seemingly, for some unbeknownst reason, ends up at a property which is about an hour's drive or so away from the NRG festival with some men who are apparently, and it was stated as being associates of one of the friends who he went out there with. Now, the verbiage used there, I don't know whether that was to spark curiosity because that's how media works, but associates of one of the friends. So he leaves the NRG festival, gets in a car, ends up back at this sort of Airbnb rental in the arse end of nowhere, and seemingly he goes there because he's got nowhere else to stay. That's the story. He's got nowhere else to go. He's lost his friends, and they obviously don't have phones to ring one another or anything like that. He seemingly forgets that he's got a hotel literally within a 10-minute walk of the Airbnb festival. That's by and by. Gets up in a car and ends up at this Airbnb, which, again, about an hour drive, an 11-hour walk, it later transpires it is. So he then vanishes off the face of the planet. That's what happens after going here. And I know what you're thinking. Well, the last person he sort of was with, surely they should be put under the spotlight. No. Apparently they have no relevance to the investigation. And this is where we're going to touch on. So, part one. So, number one, what is the first thing that could have happened? Now, the first thing that could have happened is that Jay Slater, at this property, he wakes up and he decides to get out of there. You know, I'm gonna leave. He apparently states that he's hungry. That's why he's leaving. He's going to get some scran, which is sort of slang for food up where he comes from. So he gets up. The person who he's gone over there with, who just happens to be a convicted drug trafficker. I know. But yeah, so he's a convicted drug trafficker, and this is a rave event that they're all attending, and this house is in the arse end of the back and beyond. So I know what you're thinking, but scrub that for a second. So Jay, rather than getting a lift, which apparently he is offered a lift, he turns that down, and he, for some unbeknownst reason, decides to walk to go and get scran. So he decides, I'm really hungry. I'm starving. I've been out on the bear. I've woke up. Oh, belly's rumbling. What better way than to walk 11 hours to go and get food? So that's kind of version one, that he's clearly not thinking straight because he's thinking that the best way to go and satisfy his cravings for hunger is to walk 11 hours to somewhere. He then, in that walk, ends up in a situation that he can't get himself out of. And again, there are caveats to this, and we will touch on caveats later, but this is just to put the bare bones down to say, look, these are the options. So option one is simply that Jay left the Airbnb, probably weren't thinking all that much, he was a bit stupid, and embarked on a walk that would see him succumbing to that stupidity, because it simply weren't really the sort of walk you want to be taking. He perhaps thought he could take shortcuts, get off the beaten track. Perhaps he fell, perhaps he got somewhere. The issue that I have with that is that subsequently there's loads of search parties, there's people out there with helicopters, law enforcement are out there, they've got dogs, they've got drones, they've got everything. Nothing's found. Nothing whatsoever. Don't find anything. That takes us on to number two. Number two goes down the more nefarious route, and that is that Jay is hurt. Now, look, we hear different stories that Jay has been involved in the potential theft of a watch. We don't know exactly what that watch is. It was stated that earlier on it was an AP, which is an Audemars Piguet. The only thing that confused me, for a spanner in the works, is that they valued this watch at around 12 grand. Now, whether that was just what he was asking for it because it was stolen and he thought he could flip it very quickly by giving a stupid price, because an Audemars Piguet watch is approximately £30,000 plus. Even sort of quite basic Royal Oaks hold that sort of money, but again, we're talking about a stolen watch, so you have to think, okay, maybe he just wanted to flip it real quick. Somewhere along the line that got transferred into a Rolex somewhere, which then spiraled out of control as people started connecting the Rolex watch to the street names of both blue and green Rolex ecstasy pills, which is quite interesting considering if we look at this, we talk about ecstasy pills, We have this, which is two arrested in Tenerife after throwing 200 ecstasy pills out of a car window. So we know that there's quite a few of them flipping about, and just in case we think that young people don't get involved in this sort of things, this is the Guardia Civil has arrested two people aged 18 and 19 after they were caught throwing 200 MDMA pills out of a car window when approaching a police checkpoint in Tenerife. So there you have it. We do know that these sort of things float around, and like I say, when that sort of switched over to the Rolex, that's when the drug element sort of started filtering in. But look, at the end of the day, the question raises as to why did Jay seemingly ignore the fact that he had a hotel close to the event he was at and ended up at this house in the arse end of the back and beyond. Now, I released a video yesterday that touched on the fact that this drug trafficker apparently has another drug trafficking rapper friend who has a shop in Tenerife that was robbed. Now, I weren't trying to insinuate that Jay Slater had been involved in the robbing of that shop, but I contemplated whether the fact that Jay had been apparently boasting about the theft of a high-end watch, whether things got sort of lost in translation, and did this rapper's friend, who, you know, is again a convicted drug trafficker, did he hear that Jay had been involved in possibly a stolen watch? And did this start out as a simple, again, things being misconstrued? Did Jay end up with this drug trafficker back at this house because they wanted to sort of say, where's the watch? Give me the watch, sort of thing. You know, was this more of an interrogation gone wrong? And the thing what kind of offers some credence to perhaps Jay being taken to this property and being grilled is one of two things, I suppose. And the most important one of them being the strange verbiage used by the guy when he was questioned on Jay Slater being with him and leaving this property, where he turns around and says, well, he arrived alive and he left alive. It was almost like, how can I say it? It was almost like he was saying things without saying things, almost like he may not have been. There was a time when that might not have been the case, but I let him go. And the reason why that's important is when we touch on what happened in number one, which is that he seemingly decided to, instead of accept a lift, he decides to walk. And it's quite a walk. It's an 11-hour walk. And you think to yourself, what would make you turn down a lift when you've already had a lift there? The lift is definitely going to be quicker than the walk. Absolutely. You've got no water. Your phone's nearly dead. And something would have been of a mindset here where it makes him decide that that's the better option. And there are other little caveats to that, again, where we hear about phone calls or statements being made that apparently Jay was scared, a little bit skittish, and he didn't want to return. He just wanted to get away. And that then filters again into perhaps that Jay felt the need to get off of the road and venture into a journey that would keep his location hidden. And is that what then forces him into a scenario where he ends up hurt? So again, when I talk about stripping these back bare bones, you can tell that each of these individual stories have sort of caveats and you know, roots off of them that branch out everywhere, and that's what ends up making this a very, very convoluted and complex story. But anyway, let's cut that short so this video isn't 3 hours long. And again, if you've got any questions, put them down below. And if you want us to touch further into these stories, again, let me know down below. But the final one, and the one that's going to kind of split the room, is that this is some sort of fucking hoax. There's been multiple people who have turned around and said that this is eerily similar to sort of a Sharon Matthews story. And if you're uncertain who Shannon Matthews is, this is a story that happened in the UK years ago where a woman says that her daughter has gone missing. She acquires a huge amount of public support, public funding, donations, and the world is right behind her. You know, her daughter's gone missing, and it garners such public attention. Then it turns out she's not missing at all. She's being hidden by the family. She's being hidden with a another family member. Shannon is the child is actually hidden inside a bed in a real small like drawer in a bed frame. And yeah, not a great story. And it turns out that this woman who had reported her child missing, possibly taken, ends up being the most hated woman in the UK, as this turns out again to be a huge hoax. So there are stories going around that perhaps this is something that perhaps spiraled out of control. The versions of events range from who, has Jay got himself into some kind of debt, and this has been set up in order to raise money through the GoFundMe in order to pay off this debt, and all of a sudden Jay will stroll out, oh, I've been found, I've got amnesia, I don't know what happened, I fell, hit my head sort of thing. And again, I'm not going to go too deep into that because that is a real rabbit warren, but is there anything to support it? I think the biggest thing that supports it is the fact that the family have not yet seemingly dipped hard into the GoFundMe. Now, the first thing that I feel would be when they're saying that they're so frustrated, and I'm going to touch on that later and touch on this as a single alone feature. But the fact that they've not dipped into this GoFundMe and they've not offered up a reward, and there's something suspect about it. There's something that feels off. But like I say, keep your eyes out for video number 2, as we're going to be, digging into that on its own, given that its own merit, because I think that there's some weight to be held there. But what do you think? Did Jay walk and end up? This is just a tragic tale of an idiot who goes somewhere, thinks he can walk, and he can't. And with an added question of why did he turn down the lift? Answer me that again down below. Number 2, is there some more nefarious thing happening? Did it set out as mistaken identity? Did he get himself into some debt around the NRG festival? And did they take him back to this property, rough him up a bit, and did he get away from there? Or is this just an elaborate hoax? And I don't mean so much that he never was missing. I mean what's happened since then. Is this now about obtaining as much money to perhaps clear a debt and get their boy back? I just don't know. You let me know what you think, and I will catch you all in the next one.